used to refer to as the Brooklyn juries, who simply would not convict even guilty black criminals, not innocent black
Hold up,
criminals.
Ms. Coulter. Please stop. Please stop. If you're going to talk about race, at least know what you're talking about. At least know what you're talking about. Well, tell me how much you know about being black.
Well, this isn't about being black.
Well, but you just said, you just made all these statements about how black people feel. Tell me how you know that. Yeah, you did.
This is not a book about black people. It is a book about white liberals. And I do know, and this is a fact, that once for years, Republican policies on crime and welfare, for example, were called racist. When they finally got implemented, after the O.J. verdict, I might add, by crime Giuliani in New York, Reagan and Bush judges overall, tens of thousands of black lives were saved. That is a fact. I don't have to know about being black.
Because your facts are just a little shaky. I mean, you're saying that because black people, because liberals are what? Because liberals have abandoned black people now because. What? I don't get it. I don't understand.
I don't think liberals ever cared about black people. I mean, 5 minutes after the Civil Rights Act of '64, they start calling everything that has nothing to do with black people a civil rights issue.
Wait a second.
Abortion on demand, homeless rights.
So are you saying that liberals don't care about black people? Then are you saying Republicans embrace us in a warm, fuzzy blanket?
We're not embraced back. But yeah, we tried to.
So wait a minute. So the Southern strategy was a white liberal thing? No, it was a Republican thing.
No.
And also, Newt Gingrich calls President Obama the food stamp president. That's not racist? Wait a second.
Do you really think that was? Do you believe it was racist for Newt to say that the president is a food stamp president?
Well, he wouldn't say that.
If we could just skip, I'm not a big fan of Newt, so if we could just skip that for a second and get to the Southern strategy. Because I've specifically disproved it. It's an absolutely liberal folklore. Republicans were winning the South since 1920. It was the outer states of the South. It was Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia.
Voting. What are you talking about? We weren't allowed to vote.
Who was trying to get them to vote? Republicans were.
Yeah,
and the first black congressmen were all Republicans. And the first black governor was a Republican.
You're talking about way back.
After is so different from
No. That is definitely what we're told. But in fact, the Democratic segregationists were all liberal Democrats. It is a lie that they were conservative Democrats.
Everybody was a segregationist, darling. You know, basically, everybody was. White people were. It didn't matter whether they were Republicans or not.
Ask you a question.
The first integrationists. Just read chapter 14 in this book. The first Republicans to be elected in the South.
Listen to my grandmother, who was there, who remembers what happened.
Baker, an aggressive integrationist, first Republican elected in Tennessee to the Senate. You have Winthrop Rockefeller, first Republican governor in
But you know, I have a question about today.
Integration.
Let me ask you something about what's going on now. It seems to me...
The Southern strategy is a lie.
It seems to me that voter suppression is happening in areas where black people and Hispanics are, and it really is being promoted by the Republicans, not the Democrats. So in my view, and I have a different one from you, it looks as though the Republicans are really going against blacks, not the liberals.
No, and this is a perfect example. Yes, it is, and it's a perfect example. No, I'll explain why. Of liberals using the label of civil rights to promote a liberal cause they support, i.e. voter fraud. In fact, one of the first states in the Union to pass voter ID bills was Rhode Island, 85% Democratic legislature. And who pushed it? A black Democrat in the House, a black Democrat in the Senate. That's a fact.
No, you may pick out Rhode Island, but there are other states where it's completely Republican-driven.
Why would black Democrats be pushing this? Because they had seen voter
fraud. The Hispanic vote to go to Romney.
Can I ask a general question? Every book that you write is very controversial and shocking, and it's usually an opinion that's disparate with everybody else's. Do you just write these books and try to find whatever it is that's going to make everybody say,
well, you don't leave this crap.
The reason, it's an excellent question. The reason I write these books is because I try to correct things that people believe that are just false.
Here's the question this is a question, because I was reading a book.
and you're the only one that says it.
Well, there are a few things. I mean, discovering that we never won the Goldwater states and Republicans didn't win the Dixiecrat states until the Dixiecrats died out.
You keep staying back in the past. You got to come into the present. But this is what I want to say.
That's new to me. The rest of it, other people know.
In reading your book, you know, you keep saying if you would read chapter 14, if you read, you make such divisive comments and incendiary comments and hateful comments at times. It makes people not want to pick up your book and read it. So
people who agree with her read it.
Yeah, well, people agree with it.
No, I don't think so. You name a hateful comment in here.
You know, when you talk about you stay in the past, that Republican.
No, only because it was brought up. There's only one chapter on the past, and I mean it's just a fact.
But when you talk about something like voter suppression, which obviously is trying to keep black people and Latinos,
they have never done that. That was a Democrat thing.
And it's in states where they don't even have any.
Let me just can I just say one thing, Diane? No matter what, you sit down here and you've got 5 women going butter.
Yes.
Whatever it is, thank you for coming on. Thank you for having me. Coulter, good morning.
Good morning.
I think we've all been discussing your book on camera.
Yes, I've heard.
So, good, you should be pleased. So, Whoopi would like to
I just have a couple questions, actually. In your book, you devote an entire chapter to single mothers.
Yes.
And what happens to children raised in single-parent homes. You title the chapter, Victim of a Crime, Thank a Single Mother. What is your issue with single mothers? Because I know you don't have any kids. I mean, maybe you have stepkids. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But, and before you answer, I just want to say, you said that single motherhood is like a farm team for future criminals and social outcasts. 70% of inmates in prisons come from single-parent homes. Hollywood actresses using single motherhood as a way to promote their careers, and it says, you say it's very selfish for a single mother to have a baby without a father. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, we now have 30 or 40 years of social science research. I mean, I'm just citing, this is, you know, dressed up numbers crunching. I'm just giving the numbers. 80% of the inmates in prisons were raised by single mothers. About 70% of the runaways of the child, juvenile delinquents, juvenile murderers, juvenile rapists, raised by single mothers. And the point is, this didn't happen by accident. The illegitimacy rate alone has gone up over 300% since 1970. And as I describe in my book, this was a specific plan by the left, attacking the nuclear family. The most famous example.
Go back to the. I know you want to. I'm sorry. I know you want to do this whole left thing because that's what you do. That's your act.
No,
but what I do want to know, because a lot of what you've cited in terms of this, just specifically this, is based on sort of not great research, because we've seen this research discounted time and time again. But why would you say Hollywood actresses using single mother? I take offense to that, of course, as you can understand, because having been a single mother, I don't think it was something I used as a tool.
The point is, well, I don't think you've done it in the last few years, and this is, it has become...
Are you talking about in the... I'm sorry, say this again? You talked about you're talking about actresses in the last few years.
Right, that's why I say it's the new thing, as opposed to the sex tapes.
Why don't you come down as hard on the fathers who aren't there, rather than the women who actually raised their children?
I'll answer that. Because the title is Guilty Liberal Victims and Their Assault on America. And the point of the book is, in example after example, of how people play the victim, are exalted in this society, have doors open for them, when in fact they're the ones victimizing others. I've never heard anyone say, unsung heroes, unwed fathers. How does he do it? He has 4 children with 3 different mothers. How did he have the time to do that? You do have, as I describe in that chapter, Hollywood, mainstream media, the New York Times, women's magazines exalting single motherhood, movie after movie about single motherhood, book after book.
Are you married?
Sisters are doing it for themselves.
Are you married? Are you married?
No, but it wouldn't change the difference of the facts I cite.
Do you have kids?
No, and it wouldn't change the difference.
Well, it would if you had children. You know more what you were talking about.
Do you want children? Because I do realize that there are mothers who are divorced, and you don't blame them as much, and there are mothers who are widowed. But there are women who do want children. I'm not talking about the teenagers, the irresponsible and so forth, and need to be loved. We can perhaps, go with it. But there are women who do want children.
Yeah, that's what I write about.
And single mothers.
And how selfish it is. That's precisely what...
And can take care of these children and give them happy homes or adopt these children.
Okay, no, I am not, and nor are the studies.
Racism, all those those things.
Absolutely not. You are wrong about that, and that is the interesting.
Kill anybody. That's all I'm saying.
No, it's of course it's not every. The point is you look at it from the other end.
You know, and
When you look at the prison end, and no, it is not true that I'm leaving out race. There is, in fact, I cite a study by the Progressive Policy Institute, a liberal institute, saying that if you take single motherhood out of the equation, the black and white crime rates are exactly the same. So you take everything else out. Single motherhood is not good for children. That is a fact, and it is a fact that it is promoted.
I would like to ask you, because you know, there's some nuggets of truth that you have in stuff that you write, but I don't see any compassion that you have. Do you go out and do you talk to single young girls about trying not to, you know, to use birth control? Are you trying to be part of the solution?
Well, sure,
as opposed
of
to
course
just judging
Look,
and throwing out stuff?
Look, the more non-judgmental we have been about the mothers, the more real victims have been created.
Can I ask you
millions
something?
and millions per year. I mean, it's not like this is some inevitable number that we must have of children being raised by single mothers every year. It wouldn't have gone up by more than 300% since 1970.
Let's move on that topic, because you call it liberal victims. You know, the biggest victim this week is your girlfriend, Sarah Palin. She is whining about everything. The media was wrong.
The media was horrible to her.
By the way, she has a child born out of wedlock.
The media attacked her daughter's unborn child. That
She's
was
acting like a
appalling.
victim now, and why is it just liberal to her victims? Give me a break.
No, but the point of the book is not to say that there aren't any victims. Of course there are victims. That's my
liberal and
point.
victims put together there.
Liberals play the victim while creating real victims. I'm not saying there's no such thing as victim, but can we get back to what you were attacking me for when I wasn't here?
Which was the half-black celebrity.
Yeah.
See, now
I've never heard my book. Well,
No,
I just want to respond.
Follow up on what we were saying about you're saying that
I would like to
they identify with their black side, and we had something
you
to say.
seem
What
to
did you
think that I was trying to read people's minds, I believe someone said, or that I've had some personal experience with them. To the contrary, as I cite in the book, I am talking about things they have done and said. Barack Obama writes his first book, I think it was his first book, his autobiography, Dreams from My Father. He identifies with the father who abandoned him. He met one. I read the book.
He praises his mother off with it. Can I
The
just
point
move
isn't
on?
that
We
he
don't
doesn't
have that much time.
Wait, you guys attack me for it and I can't respond. Halle Berry accepts the Academy Award. Okay, just let me answer.
Barack Obama felt that
Halle Berry
The
accepts.
truth. We are not attacking you.
I have
You
never
wrote something
heard my book read
provocative.
aloud like you're reading Mein
I'm
Kampf,
about to
and
read
I
it
just
loud.
did.
Can I just read a section aloud?
Yes, and
Okay.
read it like you're reading Mein Kampf again.
I don't think I did that.
I think you did. You spat out the words when I wasn't sitting
Then
here.
let me do this. Throughout John, that's because I'd like to discuss something current. Throughout John F. Kennedy's presidency and beyond, reporters notoriously hid the fact that JFK was a venereal, disease-ridden sexual profligate and drug addict. The courtier press was too busy manufacturing a nonsense image of Camelot. I read this because I'd love to hear your view on Caroline Kennedy's desire to become the Senate.
Was that
Yes, that was lovely. You could do the audio book. Well, we don't know that much about her. I mean, it is striking.
Nobody's attacking you. I just don't appreciate the way you're talking to her. I mean, nobody is attacking you. You didn't have to talk to her.
I wasn't
like
here,
that.
and you're describing the thing from
I just think, Ann. Go on.
Okay, I think we can move on from tone and get to substance, but he's flashing rap, so...
Well, here's the deal. Since we'll wrap as soon as it's time, but you sort of just did like two great put-downs in one sentence. I want to reiterate. Nobody was putting down or attacking you.
Look, you're claiming that I was basing it on personal experience. I was not basing it on personal experience.
The question, were you?
Halle Berry's Academy Award acceptance speech went on and on about how she was doing it for the blacks. That is identifying with her black father. I'm talking about what they do and say in public.
You can't take it, can you? You can dish it out, but you can't take it. We'll be right back in with Ann's book.
Coulter, her new book is Never Trust a Liberal Over Three, especially a Republican. Also CNN political commentator Mark Lamont Hill. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me tonight.
I'll be here.
We're using the N-word really to spark a larger conversation about personal and professional consequences of saying the N-word. We've seen a lot of people lose their careers. We've seen many people become stars because of it. Is it okay, Mark, to say this word dozens of times in movies or albums? Does that make it okay?
It depends on what you mean by okay. If you mean as, let's get this out of the way, as a First Amendment matter, I think we all probably agree, at least the three of us, that you have a right to say it. And I don't think anyone wants to remove anyone's legal right to say it. So those people we can end that part of the conversation. But do I think a person should use it? Well, it depends on context. I think context matters with language more than anything else. In a movie about slavery, it would seem sort of odd for someone not to use the N-word. I would feel odd if a slave master was saying, hey, good fellow, could you go pick up that bale or tote that barge? That would be very strange to me. In music, I think people have freedom of expression. I mean, you talked about Kanye West's song, Niggas in Paris. And for me, particularly based on Kanye's interviews over the last few weeks, we see that it wasn't just a gratuitous use of the N-word. He was talking about the experience of being treated a certain way in a certain kind of cultural space. I will say, finally, that the guy who did the voiceover for that, the white guy that did the voiceover that said niggas in Paris, made me very uncomfortable. So it's context-driven.
And does hearing it so much in pop culture blur the lines of what's acceptable to most people in daily life?
It may be, especially with the young, aspiring white rap artists who want to be like Eminem. And I do think it makes a difference, obviously, if a white person or a black person says it. It's an ugly word. Unless you have Tourette syndrome, I don't think any white person should be saying it. I also think the N-word is different from many, many other words that everyone is always trying to compare to the N-word. As your segment at the beginning said, and I think it's correct, if the black experience is different from any other experience in America. There is slavery, there is Jim Crow, so I really do resent it when people come along and say, well, you can't say the phrase illegal alien when you use the N-word. You can't say retard when you say the N-word. You can't say, I don't know, a million other things. They're always comparing it to the N-word, so the main point I want to make is no other word is like the N-word.
And Coulter for the win, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody saw that coming.
CNN. People are going to say, Ann Coulter. This is one of the first times I've ever agreed with Ann Coulter, and it's on CNN. Mark this down in your calendar. But, Ann, you've always felt this way. This isn't new for you, right?
It's not only not new for me, this is standard Republican position. I mean, Justice Rehnquist...
And we're back.
Yeah, okay, hang on.
Now we're back to normal.
Yeah, there we go. There's the Ann Coulter we know, the one who wrote this book called Mugged, and the new one now. Never Trust
You're going to love it.
Okay.
Trust me, you're going to love it.
All right, stand by. We're going to talk much more about the N-word guys and a lot of other things. When we come right back, I want to talk about the words that have cost some people careers. Talking about words that cost some people their careers and made others into stars. So who decides what you can say? I'm back now with Ann Coulter and Mark Lamont Hill. Guys, Twitter is going crazy. People are saying, I can't deal with the and I just agreed with Ann Coulter. And you got them talking, especially about that.
Well, you tell them this is a Republican position. As I was saying, sorry, I didn't know we were cutting to a commercial break. This was always Justice Rehnquist's position on the Supreme Court with civil rights laws. Civil rights laws are for blacks. They were written after the Civil War. That is why we have the 14th and the 15th Amendment. It's not for smelly homeless people in public libraries. It's not for a lesbian who wants to take her date to the senior prom. It's not for feminists. It's not for illegal aliens. This is what civil rights is about, and I'm just stating the standard Republican position.
And I saw Mark smile there when she said illegal aliens. Mark said, okay, there's the Ann Coulter we know. Listen, I want to warn everybody at home, though, that we're about to play a clip that is powerful and is controversial, but it makes an important point. It's one thing when adults use words like the N-word, but I want you to listen to this. The same words coming from the mouths of children. An agency in L.A. put this video together.
One call, niggas aim that tech. Headshot, nigga brains on step.
Okay, so that was mild. Most of this video we can't show you because kids use way more words than the N-word, derogatory things about women, women's body parts.
But that's a different set of issues.
Go ahead, Mark.
That's a different set of issues. I mean, the video you just showed some black and brown kids being looked upon in very negative light with the use of the gun, the violent imagery.
There were white kids too.
Yeah, it's a black and white video. It's hard for me to see, but all those kids are being constructed in a very negative light. And I don't think to attach the N-word to that, of course, will make it problematic. But there's also context in which the N-word is used internally among black people in ways that don't reflect that sensibility.
Yeah, but the point of the video, Mark, is to show the effect that it has on children, and many of them black children. Go ahead.
But that's my point. That doesn't have the effect on it. Young kids are not going wayward because the N-word exists lexicon. People don't use the body language and image of a gun because of the N-word. They use it because of access to guns. People don't commit crimes because of that. They commit them because there's a lack of jobs. There's mass incarceration. I could list a range of things that lead to social decay, and none of them have to do with linguistics. And so that, for me, is deeply problematic. We can't keep becoming so religious about the N-word and think that if we can remove it from our public conversation, we can eliminate public problems.
Listen, the clip that we could play was the N-word. We couldn't play the kids saying the F-bomb or the P word for women's body parts. We couldn't play that. So, listen, this isn't just about the N-word, just about guns. It's talking about words that are used in popular culture and the effect that it has on children. Ann?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Mark said at the beginning. We're obviously not talking about the government regulating anything. And, yeah, fine, there's artistic freedom. But as a personal preference, yeah, I think it's way oversaid in popular culture. And it's one thing when it's when it's hip-hop music and it's telling a parable, the same way, country music songs talk about being unemployed and leaving your wife and everything else. It's not like you think the person singing really is doing these things. It's playing a character. So I don't really object to that, but, maybe don't play it for your kids. I will disagree with everything Mark said about it being a problem of joblessness. It is a problem of single motherhood. You know perfectly well, Mark Lamont Hill.
Well, one big contributor to single motherhood is mass incarceration, which was another issue that I mentioned. My point here,
No.
Oh, absolutely. That's just an empirical fact.
You're getting the chicken and the egg confused.
No. I got it right. But the point here, the point here is that there are a range of social issues that we could be invested in, but instead we've decided to invest it in the N-word. But let me just say this, that I think part of the reason is because I think it's one of the few things in public space that white people don't have unmitigated access to or unobstructed access to. And so people freak out about the N-word because they can't say it. I think that's a big problem here.
Yeah, but you said one thing that contributes to single parent is mass incarceration. Okay, yeah, that's one thing, but the biggest thing is people having unprotected sex. That's the biggest thing that contributes to, so you can't, just...
Unprotected sex leads to single parenthood?
Well, if you're having sex and you're single...
Who's your biology
How
teacher?
do you have a kid? I mean, come on, let's be honest about that. Let's move on,
Yeah, because that's a really problematic way to think about that.
That is not a problematic way. The way you have kids is through sex. If you're in prison, chances are you're not having kids.
Don, but you're constructing a narrative that suggests that people should marry their way out of poverty.
No, I'm saying that you're saying that the biggest contributor is that it's not. I will admit to you, it is one contributing factor, but it is not the biggest and only contributing factor. And you can't talk about one without talking about the other.
And I'm saying single parenthood is not the issue. When you say single parent, you're talking about not being married. Don.
Okay, all right. So
and that's just not true.
Let's move on. Listen, we're talking about the word police here, right? We're not the word police, but listen, I want to say, we're just sticking with the N-word, but there are more words. The F word, and we're talking about fag. Why don't we just say it? And Coulter, you got in trouble, remember, a while ago saying that word, yet you defended Alec Baldwin when he said that word. Should that word be allowed to be used? Do you have the same stance on that as you do the N-word?
No. I definitely separate them. And ironically, my use of it illustrates exactly the point I was making, that blacks are being too generous with their experience in America. Yeah. Not everyone has that experience. That was a joke on a black actor, Isaiah Washington, who had called a fellow actor a faggot. And it became this huge continuing issue. There were like constant NASDAQ updates. Did he say it? Didn't he say it? Finally, he admitted he said it, and he was going into rehab for saying a word.
Didn't you say it about John Edwards?
And that's why I said, right in the middle of this whole thing, where he's going into rehab, again, for a word he used, which is madness. I said, and I had a few words to say about John Edwards, but apparently you can't use that word without going to rehab.
Okay.
That was the joke.
But that's the problem.
Quickly, Mark, quickly.
But think of this. My point on that is, this is a black man who does have the authentic suffering legacy that I think deserves some special treatment, and he's the one getting in trouble for saying a word.
Yeah, and
Mark Lamont Hill. Mark, continue your thought, but I think you're probably going to go into the vein of, a lot of people have been demonized, lost their careers about saying certain words. Do we really have a true freedom of speech in this country?
I mean, the question is, you do have freedom of speech, but freedom of speech comes with consequences. Again, Paula Deen lost her empire, part of her empire, partly because sponsors didn't want to stand next to somebody who did that. Back in the day when Don Imus used the phrase nappy-headed hose, he lost his job largely because people went to the sponsors and said, we don't want to buy products from companies that advertise on this thing. So people always want the free market to decide. Republicans always want the free market to decide. Well, the free market decided. And then when it comes to the F word for gay people, when it comes to inappropriate words for other people, I say, yeah, it doesn't have to have the exact same history as the N-word for me not to use it. As a straight person, I don't use derogatory terms against gay people because they've also had a history of oppression. They've also been denied access to marriage, which is why I'm stunned that you're vying for marriage to be this golden ideal here. I mean,
no, that's not what I'm saying. And listen, don't get it twisted. I said one of the reasons. It's not the only reason. You made it sound like we were talking about prison, that it was the only reason for single mothers. That's not it. I'm saying that's one of the reasons. And another reason is because of having unprotected sex. You cannot have kids without having sex. Usually.
That is an astute observation.
Yes. So, I mean,
but the point is still wrong. But the point is still wrong.
Hey, let's get back to words.
And go ahead real quick. I'm sorry. We're almost at the end of the show.
Yes, you're getting totally lost in single motherhood.
I'm sorry.
Look, the point with words like fags and retard is you wouldn't use those words if you were referring to an actual homosexual or to an actual retarded person. And also, I think all these words, and for every one of your examples, I can find someone who has used it and did not lose a career over it. So it's always just a power play.
Yeah, and you said the market decided. The market really didn't decide on Paula Deen. It was really the heads of companies that took her up because people were still buying her products, and they said they were going to watch her show. Her book was #1, so I'm not sure the market decided with that.
The companies didn't want to look bad.